that was surgical ICU, and then I went on to do critical cardiac ICU, which deals with the heart. So did all of that, had some real good experiences there in New York. Worked in 2 hospitals while I was there, and then my husband worked for Secret Service, so we moved down here to this area. So I worked at what was Greater Laurel Beltsville Hospital, which is now Laurel Regional or something like that. So again, found myself in ICU. While I was doing that, and it's a lot of life and death, you start thinking about that and like, okay, so let me think of other ways that I can do nursing. Oh, what I forgot to tell you is that I'm the 4th generation nurse and she's the 5th generation nurse. Everybody went in different paths. My grandmother was in med-surg, my aunt was in psychiatric mental health. My mother was in geriatrics and home care, and then I was in ICU. I've been also, after my ICU days, I went into what we call managed care and worked for a health insurance company called Prudential, which is no longer with us, but Aetna, Blue Cross, those type of organizations. And then after that, kind of was thinking about that's very different than nursing, and went through a lot of things, a lot of policy and regulations, and why do they treat Medicaid patients the way they do? And I was like, no, I need to go into the government where they're writing these policies, and I can bring common sense, community stuff. I knew about community and people, so why not bring that into the federal government? I felt like they didn't get it. So then in 2001, I went and applied and got into the government, and I've been in the government ever since there. So we're gonna so I won't say what we are. You know, the executive branch of the federal government, but in 2010 I became one of the top chief nurses in the United States.
All right
now. Fast forward to that, today I'm still in the federal government, getting ready to retire. In August 13, 2027 at 12:02 p.m.
Okay.
But I oversee, I'm the director over one of the largest federal medical malpractice insurance divisions for the federal government. So that does a lot of public health. Looks at community. We have 1,400 community health centers across the nation that I oversee, and looking at the care that is given. You know, did they do the right thing? Because, you know, when you see the commercials on TV, when the lawyer is saying, you know, were you involved in medical malpractice and did somebody do something to you? So that's the type of stuff that I do now. So it's been a journey, and I probably said in 2010 that was the biggest milestone in my life, because that position actually provided influence to Congress and HHS Secretary, so it was pretty good. And that was a good year too, because I got inducted to the American Academy of Nursing, which is only right now about 2,000 nurses that are in that group of folks. So I'm going to now turn it over to Whitney. Whitney's next slide. Whitney's journey is a little bit different. One of the things I probably left out too is I was adjunct faculty at Morgan State, so I taught. So, as you can see, nursing is not just at the bedside, it can be all over, and I'm a product of that.
Great presentation.
So, my journey obviously is a little different. I started out at Bowie State University, going to an HBCU, super excited. I got a bachelor's in psychology. I love the mind, I loved everything about it. I wanted to learn more about it. I graduated, I went to go get my master's, right? Love being a student, no. I got my master's. After getting my master's, I started writing children's books, self-help books for kids. I have 3 published at the moment. I wanted to use my books to counsel children. That was my thing, right? So any situation that a child goes through, I wanted to empower the parents to at least have one way to talk to kids about difficult subjects. So then I thought I was gonna go and get my PhD, super excited. Then I was like, don't know if this is exactly what I wanna do, right? So back to the drawing board. My whole family's like, hey, let's be a nurse. I'm like, no. So I said, I'm gonna be a pharmacist, right? But then they don't really work with people, right? So then I started exploring again. So I'm like, hey, I got an opportunity to be a teacher. Great, let's be a teacher, let's work with kids. I like kids. Did that for a few years, but it wasn't really fulfilling for me. I was doing tasks, right? So I was getting through these lessons, getting these test scores, and it became more than just the kids, right? So then back to the drawing board. Everyone's like, hey, be a nurse. I don't know about that, right? So I was fighting it for a long time. Then everything, all the quizzes, everything pointed back to nursing for me, right? So I had to be sure. Because once I opened my mouth, I knew, 4th, 5th generation. I was like, okay, you gotta be sure. So I went, said, hey, I think I want to be a nurse. My whole thing is, oh my God, right? So I wasn't prepared for that part, right? My mom went out that day, bought a stethoscope, and read everything, RN. I was like, Lord, I didn't even sit for the test. I didn't take a class, nothing. Like I had the whole thing. You know how people come to the first day dressed the part. Scrubs, scissors. My teacher was probably looking at me like, what in the world? Like, you need a pencil. That's all you need. But, so decided to go into nursing. I went to George Washington University in their accelerated program. Woo! It was a 2nd degree program, 14 months for another bachelor's. Blood, sweat, and tears, 100%. I shed blood, I shed tears, literally. It was one of the hardest schooling that I've done in my life, but the most rewarding, okay? It prepared me to be the nurse that I am today, and I would never regret it for anything in life, okay? So graduated from that program. I was blessed to get a job in labor and delivery. When I first started the program, I told you I wanted to work with kids or babies, right? I didn't want to hear la, 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 like I don't want to hear anything else, right? But I still had to be open. So I went, did my clinical experience, did cardiac, surgical, did a bunch of different areas that I had to do, right? And so I went to labor and delivery, and I was like, ugh. I don't want to do that. I mean, the babies were okay, but ugh, I don't know about that, right? Went to my first patient room, I got kicked out. I was fresh off my pediatric rotation where I'm like, hey, hi, I'm Whitney, right? And the kids loved it. I was animated. I went to a room, lady was in full-blown labor. I said, hi, my name's Whitney. She said, get out! So I'm looking like, oh my gosh. I don't know if this is the place for me. I'm super bubbly. Fast forward to today. Hi, my name is Whitney. I'm going to be your nurse for today. Okay? Are you in pain? So I found my voice, right? I found a way. But literally, I love labor and delivery. It's my passion. It's the place in the field that I feel like is for me, okay? I wake up every day. I mean, some days I need extra coffee, right? Like after watching the fight last night, I needed some coffee for today. But I love labor and delivery. I'm also a clinical instructor. So I do take people who are in nursing programs, take them in the hospital, give them a clinical experience that I had. where I fell in love with labor and delivery. So I love it. I love it. Anybody that is contemplating nursing, I can walk you through what a day looks like for me, everything. It's absolutely in my heart. I love taking people at their most vulnerable time. You come into the hospital usually on your worst day, right? You got into an accident, you fell. This is the worst and scariest time of your life where you're super vulnerable, you don't know me. I walk into your room and instantly you have to put your trust in me, okay? That's scary. That's scary. That can mean surgery. It could mean you could die, right? But you have to look at this stranger that you've never met in life and put all your care in me and trust that I have the expertise, that I have the compassion to care for you or your family members, right? So that's why I do what I do. I like to take people where they are and bring them to discharge from the hospital, right? Bring you through situations. And life is not always great, right? I have my days. I have my days where patients might not make it, right? And that's part of the job. But that's also my job, is to be there for you. And I'm human. I've cried with patients, right? Me, in my field, we work with a lot of babies. I've lost babies, right? It's unfortunate. It's not ideal. But guess what? Every single patient that I've cared for, one thing they can say is that I was there and I cared, right? So I might not have all the answers. I might not know what to say, but I'm right next to you. If you're a hugger, I'm not 100, it depends on the situation. But come on, I'll embrace you. I'll be there. If you don't want to say anything, guess what? We can be silent together, right? Well, one thing you can never say about me as a provider is that I wasn't there and I didn't care, right? And that's the main thing. That's why I do what I do. So that you can go home and remember this for years and say, you know what? I loved my nurse. She was there, she listened to me, she advocated for me when nobody else was listening, right? So that's why I do what I do in nursing. Good. So, I have a little tour video of one of my units. I do work at 2 hospitals right now. I am a travel nurse at Holy Cross Hospital in Silver Spring, and then I also work at George Washington University Hospital. So, splitting my time, doing that, kind of crazy, kind of tired, but it's all because I love what I do, and I want to touch as many people as I can. So, I had to lean on some younger nurses to make this video, but hopefully I did good.
Let's hope so. Let me know that I can get it out there going right.
Okay.
I got it.
Oh, it's on
Sound up.
No worries.
Let me pause it and Rachel, I'm leaning on you for a second.
And this is my first time doing my own video on TikTok. So, bear with me. After this, we are going to get you out of your seats and be interactive. As you can tell, I don't like to be sitting down in one place. I can't handle it.
And for those who know this area, she does her clinical instruction right down the street at St. Agnes.
That's right.
So she's in DC, she's in Silver Spring, she's in Katy. Is that Katy? Yeah, that's Katy.
Wow. How do you manage your own mental and emotional?
Person that likes to take work, kind of throw it away and be present. So it's really difficult. But honestly, finding something outside of work that I care about. and then having those coworkers that are now family to me, that I'm unable to unwind that on. You know, if I have a difficult patient, if I have a case that really I can't get it out of my head, kind of discussing that because they're in the trenches right with me and they get it. Not saying that if I go home and I discuss it with my family that they don't understand, but nobody understands you like people who are right there with it. I'm not sure. If I were to ask her, hey, have you lost a baby before? I actually don't know that answer, you know? Me, I work with women and their moms, but like, I don't take care of men. So if she says, oh my gosh, like, this father, we lost him, I could sympathize, but I can't really, you know, put myself 100% in her shoes because I don't do that every day, you know? So it's nothing like somebody who's lost somebody before that really gets it. So I think between that and finding outlets on my free time. So going out, I do a little retail therapy. I love to travel. So kind of really taking that, you know, taking that time to do something outside of work. So I don't have to talk about work, don't have to do that, and then I'm able to come back in on that day and be present again. Yeah.
So I think part of your training, you go through many hours of role playing, of being in situations. Simulations very big at this particular time in nursing education, is that you try different scenarios. So I think you never really get used to those situations where you have death situations. You have to just keep it together for your patient and their families. But that doesn't mean that you don't go into the bathroom or go somewhere and have your moments. You do have that. But again, I think you rely on your training and go back on that and say, okay, I remember this is the way I'm supposed to respond in these different scenarios. And I think also nursing is close-knit. So your colleagues help out and surround you. And if you had a weak moment, you know, people come in and help out. But I think that's what patients really gravitate to, that they see that you're a person too. You have feelings too. It's okay to feel that way about unfortunate situations.
And my first time I had a death, I went to my car and I cried. I called my mom. She thought something was wrong. She's like, oh my God, did you get in an accident? Did you? I said, no, I just lost somebody. And guess what? The first time, the second time, I don't know the exact number right now. If I were to guess, maybe about like 30, 40, right? But it gets better. And I'm not saying, this is gonna sound horrible, but you kind of get numb in a sense. Because if I did that with every patient, was crying on the floor, everything, the patient would be like, what is wrong with her? You're supposed to be taking care of me, right? So it's that balance, but also knowing that if something happens with you, that I'm human as well, right? So that I can pull up a chair, and as you're telling me about your life, I shed a tear, right? But knowing that I'm human, but I care enough to be there with you in that moment, you know, whatever that looks like. And then, who knows, you could have to leave that room and be like, you know, be in a delivery with somebody else and be like, congratulations! Even though I'm next door, they just lost their baby. So it's a balance, and it's something that I have learned to develop over time, I guess, how to deal with that in myself. Because one of my first years as a nurse, I was pregnant. So then that looked a little different. I worked in NICU, where we lost babies, where we had babies the same, you know, gestation as my baby at the time, and it takes a toll, right? So I think to second and to repeat myself, but finding an outlet, whatever that looks like for you. If it's knitting, I know some people took on crocheting, and that's what they do. So.
Now I'll tell you, nursing isn't for everybody. And sometimes people get into it based off of the money. And you got you have to really think, like me, I think it's in my DNA, I didn't have a choice whatsoever, but I think you go through different situations and you're like, So when I was in training, I had a